Okay, thanks everyone for attending the MicroProfile biweekly hangout. It is October 17th, 2017. All right, I'm going to take a look at the agenda here. The link is in the docs. We have, I added one at the top, Java 1 review. John Immense got a few. Actually, the general discussion looks to be around roadmap. Heiko added one, compliance certification. And Twitter, we might want a different acronym. What's COC stand for?
Code of conduct.
Oh, code of conduct. Okay.
We never follow up that, but I said I sent 2 emails about it months ago, and he got some feedback. Yet we never closed it, and we got some things happening at Java 1, so we like to close it because I had to fix a bunch of his stuff, and I shouldn't have. So I want us to be aligned so that anyone that is an admin in the Twitter MicroProfile knows what not to do.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to use that acronym, though.
Yeah, just whatever. I don't care. I am the worst at naming stuff.
Or best, depending on your perspective.
Yeah, well, code of conduct, but it's just like you can do what not to do.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get started. Just to give my quick perspective on Java 1. I thought it was a really good Java 1 for MicroProfile. Right. We had the MicroProfile bingo game was really popular. I saw hoodies floating around the conference. I saw tons of T-shirts floating around the conference, which means really good kind of advertising. I know I was in. There was the BOF went well. Not the BOF. I apologize. The panel discussion went well. I know that Kevin and I did a video on MicroProfile. It was the first time, I think, in a broad audience setting, people actually saw MicroProfile code in the IBM keynote. So that was really cool, seeing the code up there. Oh, and then you had me being really stiff online, on stage talking to Ian. But besides that, the rest of the keynote went well. So overall, I thought it was really positive. That's my quick rundown. I don't know if anyone else at Java 1 has comments.
Yeah, I thought overall that the places where MicroProfile is mentioned were almost always right on the heels of EE4J, and that's a really good traction for us. And so it's very clear that those are almost inseparable in people's minds at this moment. And I think that's an accomplishment. And I think a lot of people are looking towards MicroProfile to see what might happen in EE4J, at least at the moment. And that I think that was fantastic. So I would say successful year, but definitely and very successful conference. The shirts, I mean, they made it everywhere. There was a lot of people wearing those shirts, and I'm going, I think I saw you wear that shirt already, and I'm fairly certain you only got one. So, okay.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I saw people wear the shirt more than once during the conference, like the same people. I'm going, wow, okay.
Because the material is awesome, and the design is cool too.
So there were some people who just didn't want to take it off. I mean, it was pretty great. Mm-hmm. And the hoodies were everywhere too. So, I know I wore mine several days, and
Sean is wearing one right now. He got it after Java 1.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So I'm happy that we did the new logo contest because I think it resulted in some much stronger branding this year at Java 1. So I think that worked out quite well.
Oh, the other thing, you just reminded me of something when you talked about brand, is that we did have kind of a marketing meeting, right? One of the mornings, a marketing breakfast where there were, just lots of folks talking about how to get the how to get the word out there, right? And I don't know if I want to necessarily tackle that in its depth here. I suspect the folks on the marketing call probably go into a lot of depth on that. So overall, that I thought was really positive. And the one thing that does come out of this conference, and I think maybe even John, you brought it up, and that is the EE4J and kind of MicroProfile futures and alignment, right? So that's not, we kind of have an agenda that we want to talk to, but that topic came up, a few times at Java 1. And
quite often.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, like I say, MicroProfile is mentioned on the heels of EE4J very often. So I think that it's in people's minds. Obviously, if you look at the overlap between the communities, it's like massive. It's the same people on both sides.
Mm-hmm. And David came up with a great branding. It's EE4J is
EE for the next generation.
Yeah. Basically for young people, which made me feel really, really old. So thank you, David.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I don't know that we're too wildly different in age groups, but
but anyway, I'm going to pause there. Anyone else on the call want to bring up Java 1 in terms of MicroProfile?
I think I haven't catch up in Google forum for MicroProfile yet, but I know that Andy sent a feedback on how it was for him working at the booth for MicroProfile during the 2 days, 4 hours he did. And I hope that the marketing team reaches each single person, microprofiler, that attended the booth and follow up through that thread with the feedback of things we could do better. And because we need to hear from these people on things we should do more. Everyone should be asked to follow the thread and give their feedback in the open. So I think it's extremely, extremely important. Clearly, I am super behind. I have not read anything besides what the driver wrote because he forwarded to me to say task completed. But we need that feedback from the volunteers. I think having the booth shared by MicroProfile, by Eclipse, actually, was a great form for us to be vendor neutral. Most of us that were wearing our company's t-shirts, we wear the hoodie, and it just shows unity across. So it was not seen as one vendor or the other one. It was microprofilers. So the name is sticking. The same thing with the breakfast. Ian led it. It was fantastic. 2 hours. The food was great. The topics are great. Cannot even wait to see the minutes. I have yet to read them, but was it's just amazing. I'm extremely happy personally. And the most times I say, oh my God, we sucked at this. But no, I think we did the best we could do. Clearly, we can always do better. But I'm extremely happy of what we did at Java 1 and how many people came to us and said, I want to become one of you guys. So,
The breakfast meeting minutes were sent out yesterday.
Thank you, Teresa. Great.
Yep, thanks. And Ken, Mike Croft, I don't know, Mark Struberg, if you were there. I apologize, I can't recall. Any of you guys have feedback from Java 1?
Yeah, just to say that it was, I was really impressed actually at how the message is really getting across. So one thing that I did think might be tricky with having MicroProfile at just the Eclipse booth was people kind of getting the idea of what it really was, and the fact that it is, this kind of thing that's implemented by several different vendors. But that and the bingo game as well, it wasn't just people. There was obviously 1 or 2 people just in it for the merch, but I was really surprised at the amount of people that were in it, A, for the merch, but also because they knew about MicroProfile and were excited about it. I mentioned it kind of off the cuff in my presentation as well. It wasn't the main thing, but it fit in really well, and there was really good questions that came from it. So, yeah, all around really, really positive.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mark, by the way, your hoodie and t-shirt are being shipped to you from France. I sent them to you, but they need to be shipped. They are in Europe at the moment, close to you, but not really there.
All right, Ken. I don't know if you had any thoughts.
I don't think, John. No, I think it was all around
Dude.
event, and well received, and I think it was a much better reception than the previous year.
You set the bar so high there, Ken.
That's a fair bar.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, actually, our reception last year was good. So, I mean, for something that had only just been announced, it was really not bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
the
interesting. Sorry, yeah. The interesting thing I was going to say is it's amazing the synergy between Eclipse and MicroProfile, because Eclipse was perceived as, still to this day, as an IDE thing only. So we bring, I think, breadth to it that people were getting educated on, even though it hasn't been that for a long time. And of course, I think it was Amelia's point. MicroProfile is now being seen as vendor independent, which was really good.
And that is one of the coolest things. It's, we always say vendor neutral, but this time we show it by actions, and no one complained. I was at DevX BE last year, and people were complaining that we were not vendor neutral. Even after seeing the session, we were not vendor neutral.
I think it might have been a little premature on that one, but
yes. But now we showed it, and I'm so happy. I cannot even tell you. I'm like, there will be no bad words from me right now on that.
All right. Well, let's take that while we get it.
All right. I'm going to switch topics here. Thanks for everyone for their feedback. Switching topics to the roadmap. So let's do just kind of a quick roadmap, kind of informal review, because I don't think the roadmap's set in stone. But Kevin, maybe you want to kind of talk about 1, 3, and 2, just as they're currently defined.
Well, I think that this kind of feeds into John's comments in general.
You just left the screen, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally just unplugged my laptop.
Okay.
Oh,
sorry.
okay. So at least he's still listening. Okay, good. So, hey, John. Yeah. So, I think the comment came up because, we had started to talk about the content of 1.3 and 2.0, and John was asking, well, where did that content come from? And I think that's what we need to kind of talk through. I was just talking with John Klingen yesterday, and I mentioned how, I should start a new thread to find out, okay, how do we keep the momentum going? We did a very good job with 1.2 and time for Java 1. So we've talked about doing time-boxed releases. So for fourth quarter, what should we be driving for from either a 1.3 or 2.0 release? I mean, are we really going to try to do both or just one? And what should be the content? And so that's where, John Klingen was saying, okay, we got to get that on the agenda for tomorrow. And when we looked at the agenda, John Emmett had already put most of that information in for the agenda. So that I'm just kind of opening it up now for discussion and find out what other people are thinking for a fourth quarter release, 1.3 versus 2.0. Do we do one or both? With discussion.
Initial thoughts from me is that this particular quarter is a down quarter from a development perspective, and from a news cycle perspective, the middle of December to the end of December, anything you announce in there, it's a black hole and will be completely missed. So I monitor the download the web traffic stats of a lot of different Apache projects that use Google Analytics, and I can tell you, it's like, boom. That's how much traffic you get during December. So
could we sort of game that in the sense that we do a 1.3 time box, but with very little features, and which we announce but don't put, let's say, big bets on, and then have the 2.0 with the next big thing,
towards
so
the
that
big
the
Q1.
Yes, something when
Right.
people are back. So just that we have the regular 1.3, that we can prove that we are trying to do time-boxed releases.
Oh,
even
yeah,
if it's only
absolutely.
small.
Absolutely, I would say that.
Or even small on purpose.
Yes, I would say on purpose, and because we just got done with Java 1 and we all just went crazy over the top into making sure we met Java 1. But yeah, I would say that just not even talking about what's in the releases, just from a numbering perspective and an effort perspective. I mean, I would plan for a more conservative release for this quarter, and then intentionally have a bigger release Q1 of next year. That would be my gut reaction.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm going to throw out is I'm a little bit worried about MicroProfile 2.0 adopting kind of the Java EE8 technologies too soon, because I think we do want to make sure that we have implementations of all these specs by more than one implementation, ideally, being able to go off and deliver on it. I know that we're mainly around specifications first, but even then, I'm a little bit worried that if we add them, there's going to be pressure to actually deliver on that really quickly.
Is that the intent of 2.0, to upgrade the overall EE level up one notch officially?
Well, that's what I proposed.
Okay.
And David, the idea might have come from you. I'm not sure, but at one point, someone had talked about, when are we going to upgrade to Java EE8 specs? And someone suggested, well, maybe that would be a good reason for a 2.0 release. And I just kind of ran with it. Maybe it wasn't you, but
I would even go a bit more aggressive. So what's the problem with defining the spec now and announcing that we want to go for EE8 compatibility in MicroProfile 2.0? I mean, what is the time frame, seriously, to deliver such a thing? At least the first betas. Well, it doesn't need to be rock solid.
Well, I think John said it already, which is we need to give some time for EE8 implementations to actually show up.
Yeah, and the testing, the TCKs. I mean, each of the individual components that have had to develop a TCK, the only way that those got solidified is by having implementations.
Right. One of the things that we need to make sure we don't miss is, if we are talking about Q1 next year, or maybe even Q2 next year, we could be doing we could already have open source code for EE4J out there, and we could be saying Java EE 8 and EE4J 1.0 beta compliant.
Wow, you are optimistic.
Compliance.
I don't think Q1 is the right time frame, but that's why I kind of said more like Q2.
Okay.
Well, I was actually thinking
just saying that out loud.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, if we have a roadmap, we could have the 1.3 in there. 1.4 we'll have to figure out, right, since we're time boxed. But around 2.0, I was thinking, we could say 2018, right? Hypothetically, we could say first half of 2018, which could be aggressive. But I like the idea of 2018, and we could deliver on that whenever we can deliver on that.
Yeah, I definitely think it should be 2018. There's no doubt about
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so people know that we understand it's something that has to be there, and we understand, right, that it has to be there. So having it in the roadmap's a good thing.
Let's use something that works. When movies are coming up, they just give you the year, not even a month sometimes. We can use the same. It works. 2018. Why commit to a quarter when we don't even know? Stop the BS. Just use the year. We know it will come in 2018. That's it.
Yeah. The one thing there, though, is at least with the Eclipse, and I know, we can skip this, but Eclipse kind of wants to know when releases are coming. And yeah, just a second. And so that's why we're, we try to identify some date. Now that date can change as we move forward, but, they just kind of want to know because they've got a lot of different projects and they know that the IP is going to be coming through and they kind of want to try to schedule it. So,
Kevin, I guess my question to that would be, does it matter if we pick a date, does it matter what release it is? So for instance, if we're talking about doing a 1.4 this quarter, that's fine. We could say we're doing a 1.5 quarter one, and then towards the end of the year, we can actually say, well, you know what, that's actually going to be a 2.0 because we can do that in that quarter. So long as we've got a release at a given time, does it matter which release it is?
No, I mean, even that can change. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've already agreed that we're going to release at least quarterly, so we know that there's that cadence there. I've not seen anybody disagree with that.
No, but the one thing I do want to hear from John Ammett, because he kind of brought up this discussion and got it onto the agenda, and so far we haven't let him talk.
Yeah.
Well, no, I've purposely been listening. This way I can get an idea of what you're talking about. So when I put this out there, it was more of a question of, we have 2 releases out there listed on the Eclipse site as both happening on November 13th or something like that, which I think we're all saying is not, the date is irrelevant. The question is really, are we planning to do a 1.3 towards the end of the year, and are we planning to do a 2.0 sometime early next year, forgetting about content? Because really I believe what we want to demonstrate is that we are having regular releases. We are saying that every 3 months, every month, every so often, we are going to cut a release. It doesn't matter what's in the content. We're just saying that, yes, we plan to have a release every period.
Yep. Yeah.
And I personally, I still feel that we should be taking the approach of whatever is ready to go at that point in time is what ships. If you're not ready to go, we shouldn't be trying to rush to complete something. We should be biting off something that we believe we can achieve and say, yes, it's done and it's ready to go.
Yeah, the maintenance releases.
And the more that we can do that, the better it will be.
It doesn't mean that we need to ship whole new specs each release. It could also mean that we do small incremental upgrades to existing specs and ship them as 1.3, just to show progress.
Yep, exactly what we did with config 1.1.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I think then it sounds like we are all definitely on board with a regular release cadence and whatever's ready ships. The obvious then open statement is that, what we have discussed so far in this call and potentially on the list is 2.0 will be kind of an overall EE level upgrade, and that's not necessarily an internal dependence of us, that we kind of have to wait for all of us completely to get more complete with EE8 ourselves. So that usually takes a little bit of time. So I don't know that we could necessarily plan that one. We just maybe have to kind of wing it.
Yep. So one way I could see that even working for us across the board is, let's say we look at the JSON specifications. We have a JSON binding and we have a JSON processing. But right now, MicroProfile requires use of processing. So you can use JSON object to pass on. Maybe that's the very first upgrade we take on, where we're saying now we're expecting implementations to include JSON binding in addition to whatever else they're processing. And then forget about EE8 roadmap and just say by small pieces, we're adding functionality to the platform.
Yeah. So in that particular case, though, the JSON B, that requires an update to JSON P. So we would be starting that Java EE8 upgrade, but yeah, we wouldn't have to do the whole thing all at once.
Exactly.
Yeah, we were also talking on the REST client call the other day that we want to have may want to have a newer version of JAX-IS, perhaps not for 1.3, but for the release after.
Yep.
Then the individual specifications need to be working on their next major version if they're going to actually officially cross the line of relying on one version of their related specifications to relying on the next version of the specification.
So just from a practical point of view, is it possible to upgrade parts of a server? If you take, for example, Payara or Tommy or Liberty Profile, which are currently Java E7 base level, and is it legally possible from the TCK aspect to upgrade to JSON B10 and JSON P11, which are E8 level?
I was going to give
Is
you
this possible?
I was going to give you a different answer until you said from a TCK perspective, and the answer from that perspective is no.
That's what I feared, yeah. So it's practically not possible to upgrade, all the servers we have.
Well,
except
why couldn't
we are not EE compatible anymore.
Well,
but why couldn't you still pass the JSON P10 TCK by upgrading to JSON P11?
No, because the TCKs check for new things in the package namespace. So it will fail if it sees things that don't belong there.
Right.
Yeah,
And
but
then
that's just from an implementation standpoint and testing your implementation, but there's nothing that would prevent you from having a configuration that would bring in, JSON P 1.1 with CDI 1.2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
meaning
that's
users
a very good
can
point.
do the change, but vendors can't ship that.
Exactly.
You won't be able to pass the TCK, so you can't say this. You can either decide this release or this server is MicroProfile 2.0 certified or Java EE specified or certified.
Right.
But once you upgrade one technology, you can't claim E7 compatibility anymore.
Correct.
Because you didn't pass the TCK.
Right, and I think Kevin's statement was the user can do that.
Correct.
Right.
Of course, yes, he can.
Yeah.
And we could also, the vendors can, but different deliverables. You can deliver or ship one version which is MicroProfile 2.0 specified, and a different version which different JSON B and JSON P level, which is E7 certified, but not both at the same time.
No, that's not possible either, because of licensing is tied to the distribution. Making more distribution means more licensing costs, so we generally don't do that.
Oh gosh.
So,
well, once EE4J, right? Once we have an EE4J, this kind of ties into the conversation that was there a little bit earlier. Once we have EE4J, 8.0 or 8.1, whatever it's going to be called, right? Out there, then MicroProfile could do that if it wanted to.
Yep.
But you need to be careful with the if, because that means we have unlimited resources to pull different, different stuff. We don't. We need to be super smart on what we deliver.
So here's the thing: from a sub-spec perspective, it seems pretty cut and dry that any spec is really okay to start using the next major versions of the stuff that they want to use, but that practically speaking, they should probably upgrade their version number to another major version, and we won't be able to include that into a MicroProfile release until we reach MicroProfile 2.0. That doesn't mean that they can't get started. They could probably do their own sub-spec releases, and they could probably be used by people. But in terms of being included in a MicroProfile release, we would have to wait till MicroProfile itself says, the umbrella spec says, now we're at EE8. And then we would include all the major 2.0 versions of those things. But until then, we would have to take the current point release of whatever's being worked on.
Yep. And David, you and I mean, we updated the spec to indicate that.
Right.
To say, hey, we're just identifying the base version. If you want to go above it, that's okay. But, we only claim that the compatibility or the integration is at the level that we've defined.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe go ahead.
On the other hand, being too conservative and leaving too much time will give the Spring forum much more, the Spring guys much more forum, because they quickly complain that Java EE is moving so slow and MicroProfile is also moving slow.
Have
blah
they
blah blah.
complained that MicroProfile is moving slow?
No, not yet. But if we left leave too much
did we
time,
lose that one already?
no. But if we
5,
leave
6 in
too
a year
much
is too
time,
Well,
David, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
If we leave
Yeah,
too
I
much
know.
time for upgrading to E8, then they will complain.
Well, that's I say. I think that let's just I'll use JWT as an example. There's nothing wrong with us having a 2.0 in the works while we continue to issue releases for 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 of JWT. That would be just fine. We could even formally release the 2.0, and then we're doing 1.1 and 2.1 in parallel if we wanted to. I don't really, that may be a little bit of work, but it's just a kind of a merging question, Some features wouldn't be able to go here versus there. And from a perspective of someone who might want to use that in a server, I would grab the one that corresponds to the server version that I'm using, And so that's the ups and downs. That's the nature of that. So the sub specifications are absolutely welcome to jump ahead, it seems to me. If they want to be included in MicroProfile 1.3, they would need at least a version of that is clearly at still EE7. Like they can't have a bunch of API functionality that ties very, very directly to EE8 stuff.
Right.
And they would need to put that in just the next rev. But most of us as vendors and people implement 2 versions. We've got the previous version, which is stable and receives patches and upgrades and things like that. But then we got the next one, which is like getting all the major fun stuff. So,
I guess I'd just like to add in terms of the whole Spring thing. It's in many ways we can't compare ourselves to Spring because they're a single vendor control everything effort. We're a multi-end vendor portability effort. So by that nature alone, we're always going to be a little bit slower than what Spring can do.
To some extent, although I kind of wonder if we might be a little faster sometimes because we get a lot more input from a lot of different sources. So it certainly seems to be the case with what we have going on MicroProfile so far. The amount of material produced in the last 8 months alone has been pretty high.
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
So
I think that's only been achievable because we have most of us here. Because usually, no matter how awesome you are, one company doesn't have that many top A-level people.
Yeah. I would like.
And we've been putting them all of ours together, and so it's.
Well, except for me. Everybody else is A-level.
Guys.
John's A+, man.
Guys, the topic is great, but we're dwelling too much on it without moving forward. Let's move to the next thing. And I would like to place it on because it's not in the agenda. But Mark,
actually, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm gonna interrupt. I would like us to see. We've talked about 2, but we haven't really talked about what's next in 1.3. And I know there's open tracing and open API. They're kind of there. Are those considered placeholders, John? I'm not sure if you were going to try and target the JAX-RS, the client API.
Client.
So what are our thoughts about 1.3, which is immediate horizon?
So something's definitely going to ship with the client API.
Go ahead, John.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Something's definitely going to ship with the client API. It may not have everything, but something will be there. So I plan to have something for 1.3.
Good.
Another question, which is kind of unrelated to all these discussions, and it's about modularity. And once we add more and more functionality and more features, then the point might come up that MicroProfile contains a lot of technology pieces and you don't always need all of them. Do we allow to ship only parts and have the others kind of pluggable? So
Sure.
if a vendor, is this okay? Is this defined somewhere? So we've defined a MicroProfile 1.3 consists of those and those parts, but you don't always need to ship all of them. You just need to have them somewhere around, and the customers can plug and play what they need. Is this okay with us?
I say yes.
I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, we are defining kind of the umbrella for MicroProfile, but they consist of, X number of components, and those components are independent. We're doing separate specs, separate APIs, separate TCKs. And if someone comes along and, let's say look at MicroProfile 1.2, if they only want to support fault tolerance and JWT, then sure, they can do that. They can't claim support for MicroProfile 1.2, but they can claim support for JWT and fault tolerance.
One thing that's interesting though is over time, I think what's going to happen is some specs will rely on other specs, right? So could potentially the client API that John's working on leverage JWT in some way, right? Plug in automatically.
Yep.
So these are things that we also have to think about in terms of what is going to be required, for people that want to, or distributions that want only pieces and not necessarily the whole thing. So
and I thought about that as well when Kevin was talking, and I thought, well, we don't have that problem now, so let's let people get away with it as much as they possibly can. And I think if the specifications do start relying on each other and bringing each other in, that'll kind of change the answer. And those people who implement, if you're implementing client API and you're not implementing JWT, and client API eventually becomes dependent on JWT, so it's in your best interest to stay on top of the game, because that's probably a feature people are going to want, and not like they're doing it because we told them they have to. They're doing it because they need to really stay relevant.
If we would really officially go forward and announce this Lego plug and play ability, then this would be a huge difference and would set us apart from the old Java EE servers to this new approach. So we could even make advertising out of this, positive advertising.
Well, I'm not sure it's that different, really, because people could do implement a specific spec, right? OpenEJB and stuff like that, right? There could be multiple implementations of things even today where you don't have to support the whole platform.
Yeah,
Technically speaking, OpenEJB is illegal because it doesn't pass the TCK, which there is no standalone TCK for EJB. But there is for servlets and there is for JPA. So therefore, I totally get you. But
on the other hand, you probably have specs like config that you want to have in each implementation, so that all these other sub-specs can leverage that and be configured in a uniform way, and not every 10 sub-specs have a completely different way of doing things, and it's getting hard again.
But that's an implementation detail of the other specs, I'd say. So if JW2 spec relies on MicroProfile config, that would totally make sense. But at the end, it's an implementation detail of the JWT implementation, if it is configurable via MicroProfile config or any other way, isn't it?
Well, if it requires, let's say, some token or URL or credentials or whatever to be delivered via the config spec, it's no longer a detail, but it's really a hard dependency.
I think even fault. No, I think you're right on, Heiko. And I think fault tolerance kind of hit that because they were trying to figure out how to make some of their features configurable. And I think they ended up going both ways, that, okay, if you're within the MicroProfile umbrella, then you can use config. But if config's not there, then you could just use, environment variables instead of.
That's the EE spec right there, right? If you're part of EE, then you have to support these additional features, but if you're standalone, then you don't.
Yep.
All right, so I haven't heard anyone mention anything about Open API and Open Tracing, unless I spaced out or something.
I did. I've been talking. What's his name? Arthur. I've been talking with Arthur because he's been asking to try to get his initial cut merged in for his spec. And so I know he's working on it. I don't think he's convinced that it's ready for fourth quarter yet. But that's what, he's still trying to drive towards that. He would like to be part of 1.3. He just hasn't figured out if he can make it yet.
Okay.
Guys, feedback for each one of us for next Hangout. There are different calls happening each week about specific sections, technically speaking, about MicroProfile. And I think we need to do better at gathering written feedback before this call so that we can have an exact summary, because not everyone is like John that can. Sometimes if John doesn't join this call, he sends a written summary, but no one has that structure. So we need to bring it up so that we have exact data, written or not, for every call that is happening a week, because it seems we're lacking on this. I want to know about metrics. I want to know about.
All us talking about this maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I thought we created status pages for each of the specs, but I can't remember.
It has not been updated. I think we need to pull back and have a structure for next call, because we're spending too much time talking about these things we should already know and have a summary and say, this is what we're going to tackle and bring back to the community. This is not the place to bring a solution. We should already know what's up, and we need to do better at bringing the data here. And this is just like a status quo. And I feel it's just to say feedback for all of us. We're a little bit sucking on it because we are not prepared. Next call, we will do better. We will ask ahead of time, whomever is dealing with those calls will need to give us a written or join this call to give us updates so we can be what the call that we want to be. Otherwise, we dwell too much in one topic and drop others. Feedback, open feedback.
And well, we did do that for a couple of calls where we did have the status. I know, and yep, but
let's go back to that next call.
Well, we'll try and revisit that a little bit more, maybe. But,
yeah, I think that's really good feedback. I think that works for the individual specs, and then we could reserve time for other topics for the remainder of this call. I think that's good feedback.
Yeah, and I want to know about marketing also. We have Teresa here. She joined the call, but we have not given her one moment to tell us, 2 minutes, tell us what happened last Friday.
Right. So in practical speaking, I don't know that there is enough time in a 1-hour call to review all of the specifications that we have.
We choose.
And so we may want to just rotate them and say, this is your time. We're going to do these two. So can you come to this specific MicroProfile Tuesday meeting and you two specifications and give us some,
I would love that.
Some updates, And then I think we just need to put together some sort of little calendar for that. And we could probably fit at least 2 of them in.
I would love that. Let's be more specific and much more disciplined moving forward. I call this like Java 1 afterwards. What is the exhaust?
But speaking in specific terms, that might be a little bit more of a motivating factor for people to attend this call who are not the usual suspects and just people out there in the world. So if you could,
I adore you guys.
Attend 2 Tuesdays in the future, and you will hear about X and Y, and then we will have general topics about MicroProfile.
And also, it will help us. So yesterday, I sent a note to the MicroProfile saying tomorrow is the call, but we didn't have the minutes, so I didn't know what we were going to talk about aside from Java 1. So if we have the minutes ahead of time, that creates
just
more.
FYI, agenda is before the meeting and minutes is after the meeting. So
agenda.
If we can have the minutes ahead of time, then please let me know where the time travel machine is, and I'll use it for other things.
Guys, agenda. But I don't want to waste the time. If you accept the feedback, please let's just execute next time. Let's do better. We can do better so that we can bring more, not only these 10 people, but more people. But I want to ask Mark, the JSR, you and Emily submitted it. We submitted it to the JCP. Do you have a number?
That's on the end of the agenda. We're going in the order that people put it in there. So we got 10 minutes left.
Mark didn't add it. I added it.
All right, right. But let's get there in the. Let's get the whole. Let's go down the list of the agenda. So.
Okay.
Not that I don't want to know about the config JSR, but I put an item on the agenda when you got 10 minutes left. I don't know if we're going to get to it. So don't jump in the queue.
All right. So in that context, I think, Heiko, we've covered compliance certification, right?
Well,
we can do individual, or do you have outstanding points?
Yeah. So what I was thinking is if someone says we are X compliant, if it's only the vendor himself, I mean, they can just say whatever they want. The question is, do we want to sort of cross-check this from that someone else also tries with that vendor implementation, or if we don't, and we have outside people coming and they download, let's say, Wildfly, where we say, okay, it's MP1.2 compliant, and they download that and don't find any MP1.2 piece in it. How much does that dilute our message of the MicroProfile group itself? That we have this out and that we have the TCKs and all these things, and then people are disappointed.
So my thought on this, sorry, is first of all, I'm kind of offended you use Wildfly as the example. I'm kidding. That was a joke. Second is, this is one of with us kind of trying to stay as lightweight process as possible. I would kind of like to tackle this when it becomes a problem. I'm not sure it's really a problem yet. If we see this happening, I think we should reach out to the to whoever may do that and have a conversation. And then if it becomes a problem, then we go off and tackle it.
I think it's a premature optimization at the moment.
Okay.
In terms of status of how EE certification is, it's always been on your order. Considering all these TCKs are out there and available for people to run, we're already a bit ahead of the game. You know what I mean? So, so I think that as long as we can enable more people to run these tests, which seems to be what is happening, that we're deliberately enabling people to run the tests, I don't know that we're going to encounter much of any issue in practical terms.
Okay.
To your point, Heiko, I think it is a good idea for us to keep tabs of this kind of thing. So, good agenda item. Amelia, okay, we've got 8 minutes left. And I think you wanted to cover marketing as well, a marketing status update.
No, I don't have the marketing updates. I wasn't able to join the call, and Teresa just said to me that she wasn't able to join the call fully, so we do not know. We need to read the minutes and see what's up. Okay. But Teresa, do you have anything to say on this?
Not really. I think the consensus with the marketing folks, they were the same as you guys. Everybody was happy how things turned out. The branding and the awareness of MicroProfile was, I think, well received. The breakfast meeting minutes were drafted up and sent out, and I think there's separate threads for hot topics in there. I personally just reviewed the meeting minutes. I didn't review all the threads, but there are also plans for 2018, what we're going to do, and steps moving forward. So. Because I was only there for 10 minutes, I just kind of quickly read through certain topics. I think maybe next week we'll have a little more meat in terms of the marketing.
All right. Thank you. So no, we're catching up. Everything. So.
Are we done with that agenda item then?
Yes.
Okay. So the agenda item that I wanted to talk about is I just think that on the EE4J side, we're going to be like 100 people in lightning speed, right? And so, I think we have to think about how on the MicroProfile side we're going to keep up with that kind of growth. when I keep up with that kind of growth, I mean, we want people to also identify with MicroProfile as strongly as they do with EE. And so if there's anybody on the MicroProfile side that's been in or around our community and we aren't fully embracing them, I think we want to do that like now, before they start to identify more with E4J exclusively and not with MicroProfile because they were near or in the community and never really got acknowledged.
Mhm.
But they get acknowledged over EE4J, so they're really, really strongly exclusively EE4J thinking. Obviously, you want as much overlap between the communities as possible. So basically, if there's anybody in the MicroProfile world who has been supporting us over the last year, I think really now is the time for us to just pull them in.
Mm-hmm.
Try and get them some commit or get them some more direct involvement, some more direct acknowledgement.
Yeah, I agree. Just a data point for everyone. The MicroProfile community alias, sorry, I apologize. The E4J-community alias has roughly 400 subscribers. Right? So just to give you a bit of a heads up, I think MicroProfile, and we're about a year into it, I think, we're at about, last time I looked, 750 people signed up to the Google group. Right? So just some interesting data points. There are some interesting discussions happening in the E4J community where we're talking, for example, about breaking up, EJBs or whatever, right?
Sure.
There are some interesting discussions there where it might be better to try things out in the context of MicroProfile as opposed to EE4J. Like there was the idea of, a metrics annotation. I think it might have even been the fact that EJBs do metrics out of the box, right? Well, wouldn't it be interesting to do some of that stuff in the context of the metrics work in MicroProfile, right? That'll eventually fold back into EE4J in the future, right? So there are opportunities, I think, for us to bring this stuff up and build awareness of MicroProfile.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
No, other than even like this discussion that I was having with Arthur on Open API, he was asking already. He said, "Well, okay, how do I become a committer so that I can start doing my own merges here?" Now I think he's only had one pull request, so it's kind of hard to automatically make him a committer. But I think we have a lot of examples of other people that have been very active with our project, and we haven't been promoting them as committers yet.
Yeah.
So
I think and in my perspective, I think one commit is I don't want to say enough, but maybe it is. I mean, he's going to do a whole bunch of work, so obviously we know what's coming on the other side of that one.
And
we don't need to be gypsies, with fortune tellers to know what's on the other side. So
no, it's just a matter of having sufficient justification when we put them forward for a vote, because not only do we vote on it, but then because we're part of the technology team, they take a look at it and say, hey, okay, are they just trying to pull a buddy in, or did they really participate? So you have to have enough justification.
Sure, but I think we could be okay. We've had a lot of people support us. And so I think we need to be very aggressive about acknowledging the people that are supporting the community directly and identifying as MicroProfile, and get them some acknowledgement, and some official inclusion.
So close the loop, and who's going to send an email and request to say these people need to become committers and do this? Because all as well, and this is one of the topics that have been extremely intense from the moment we sent the proposal to become a part of Eclipse. We need to do better and making these people, not only the technical, but also the business people, the marketing people, to become committers. We are so slow that we seem like we're not as welcoming. David is correct. Who is going to send that freaking email to make this?
Well, we can send a note to the main list and say, now is the time. If you know of anybody who's out there, please propose them. Not necessarily on the MicroProfile list, but we have our dev list. Is that where we've been doing most of the committer?
It has to be done through the Eclipse portal.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, at least suggest them up or something like that.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll try and send out the generic thing as a reminder.
Well, I would like to send it off as my agenda item, but I'll send off the
Go ahead.
encouragement. I'll do the cheerleading.
Nope. Go ahead, David.
Let's do this. I am extremely happy. Heiko, what?
The other part is that we acknowledge people that have contributed to a certain MicroProfile umbrella release, perhaps within that document, the release document, spec document, whatever, just as the list of all contributors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have those people. We've got all of our marketing people. We've got people like Ivar who've been out there doing talks.
Everything.
Ivan.
Right. We have people who have worked on the samples. So we got a whole lot of people. I think we just need to let's just make a big, huge list and see if we can.
Let's just do it. I cannot tell you. You already know how I feel about this, so I'm not going to.
I understand.
Cute.
So, like I say, now's the time for this kind of inclusion. Otherwise, we're simply going to be seen as a pickier, smaller community to the more open and inclusive EE4J, and then our innovation is pretty much going to go down the drain after that.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, the tone, you will always find the best words to say how sometimes we suck, and you don't even use the word suck. It's amazing. Seriously, I'm always blown away.
Couldn't be more opposite in that regard.
Seriously.
You guys know each other, right? I think you two know each other in some way.
22 years. 22 years. So, FYI.
All right. It is the top of the hour, so I think I'm going to go ahead and call an end to the meeting. I think.
I want 1 minute. I need 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
I only need 1 minute for Twitter. So.
Okay.
And a few of the threads, we talked, and Heiko and a few other ones joined on this. Twitter MicroProfile has different admins. Twitter MicroProfile shouldn't follow anyone because we have different admins, and we can't honorably say without neutrality that we will follow one person and not the other one. Twitter MicroProfile cannot follow anyone. I already defollowed 200 people. That happened over Java 1, and only 2 are being followed. That is the JSR config and Eclipse, I believe. Nothing else gets to be followed. I do not know where this needs to be written. Maybe in marketing, maybe in media. I don't really care. But yeah.
Why can't it follow all the people who are listed on the front page of the website?
Because.
What's so controversial about that?
Because we will miss people, and then sometimes when you don't follow someone, there is this sense of, whoa, what happens? Currently, when someone follows MicroProfile, we get the feeds so we can retweet.
So here's the thing, that follow list is a great way to draw attention to our supporters. So I would almost wager that it should be much bigger than smaller. It just needs to be fair on how it grows big, and I'm okay with fair.
And we don't have the structure at the moment. Because we don't have the structure at the moment.
Put some thoughts into how we could put that in place.
Yes, but I prefer to avoid it until we have the structure. I don't like bias in anything. So I defollow everyone, and I adjusted. I linked the MicroProfile to the JSR, and I already gave feedback a while back to Mark and Emily saying they should say that they are the managers of the JSR and the description, and link it to MicroProfile. So everyone has worked, but we don't have the structure yet in the media. So be careful with following until we have it set up.
I will just say that if you went and unfollowed a whole bunch of people with a unilateral action, that's unfair, and that's the kind of thing that we don't want to see. So we probably want to see more discussion around actions before they're taken.
Correct. But we can't
And then if we want to have it fair, we should put a process in place or somehow encourage more inclusion rather than less inclusion. So
we need a skeleton in place for media. We need a skeleton until that is set up. No following, because there is not a manager to deal with this.
I would just say I think maybe we tilted the wrong way on that one. Maybe we want to tilt towards having more people in.
I believe first on the skeleton to make sure that it's fair.
All right, so okay. I'm gonna bring this up here. I think you two know each other, and you could probably continue this conversation after the call is over. But this is a good conversation to have in the Google groups as well, right? So let's continue it there. And good topic. This time, 2 weeks, same bat channel. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye everyone. Awesome. Okay.